Hello and welcome to watchandlearnphotoshop.com. In today's tip, I'm going to show you how to create a reflection effect similar to the one you see here on watchandlearnphotoshop.com/bundle.html. And this is our training bundle, which is a package that includes all 4 of our training series. And the effect we're talking about is just a series of pictures here with the reflection underneath them. So let's switch to Photoshop and take a look at how we can accomplish this. Okay, in Photoshop I've created a generic company logo, and we have one word in front of another word here, and we want to give a reflection to each of these words. And that reflection will do 2 things. First of all, it'll just make it look a little more interesting, but secondly, it will also give this a sense of depth. By having a reflection on underneath company and a reflection underneath logo here, it'll give it more of a sense that logo is hovering in front of the word company instead of just attached to the front of it. So let's go ahead and let's make our logo stand out a little bit more by giving it a stroke. So in order to do that, I'm going to double click on the company layer out here to the right side, and that will open up our layer styles dialog box. Now I'm going to click on the word stroke, and be sure you click on the word itself, not just the checkbox. If you just click on the checkbox, you'll just turn on the stroke, but you won't see the options over here on the right. If you click on the word stroke itself, you'll be able to see the options over here. So I'm going to choose a 3-pixel stroke, and I'm just going to change this color to white. And then click on OK, and click on OK in your layer styles dialog box. There we go. Okay, now we want to apply that same stroke to our logo layer, and we can do that easily by copying and pasting our layer styles here. So we can right click on the company layer, click on copy layer style, and then right click on the logo layer and click on paste layer style, and it will apply a stroke with all the same settings to that logo layer. Okay, now we just want to move this logo layer around so that it doesn't cover up too much of the word company and we can still kind of tell what it says. And that looks pretty good. Okay, now we want to create our reflections. So what we're going to do is we're going to create copies of both of these layers. Okay, so I'm going to drag this logo layer down to the new layer icon, and it will create a layer called logo copy. So we'll double click on that layer name, and we'll just call this logo reflection. There we go. Okay, now we're going to create a copy of the company layer, so we'll drag that company layer down to the new layer icon, and we'll call this company reflection. So we'll double click on that layer name and rename it accordingly. And I want to encourage you to, give all your layers names so it's a little easier to work with. Okay, for this company reflection layer, I'm going to go to the selection tool, and holding on to shift, I'm going to drag that company layer down. And by holding on to shift, it will keep it at the same X value, so it's not moving to the left or right at all. And then we will flip this over. So we're going to go to Edit, Transform, Flip Vertical. So we'll flip that over so it looks like a reflection. There we go. And now what we want to do is just rasterize this layer. So in order to rasterize it, what we need to do first of all, one thing you can do is just right click and click on rasterize type. But all that does is it rasterizes the text itself, but the stroke around it is still applied as a layer effect. We don't want that. We want to rasterize the whole thing. So one way we can do that is by creating another layer and linking it to this company layer, and then with those 2 layers linked, we'll just join them together. So let's drag this company reflection layer on top, and then shift click on this layer 1 so that we have both of those layers selected. Or if you're using an older version of Photoshop, like Photoshop CS or before, then instead of shift clicking to select both layers, you'll simply take this selected layer, select it, and then click on the link column over here to the left of the layer name. And that link column is not available in CS2, but in CS1 and older versions of Photoshop, you'll see another column over here next to these little eye icons, and that second column is for linking. So you'll select the company reflection layer and then click on the link icon next to the empty layer that you created. And then once you have those two layers either selected or linked, we'll hit Control E to combine them together so that it's just one layer. And you'll see there's no longer a little F icon over here to the right signifying a layer style. Instead, it's just one rasterized layer. Okay, so now let's go to the logo reflection layer. We'll click on it, and again, holding on to Shift, we'll drag it downwards and nudge it into place with the arrow keys. And then once again, we'll flip this layer over too. So we'll go to Edit, Transform, Flip Vertical. And there we go, we've created our basic effect here. Now we're going to rasterize this layer as well, so I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to drag that layer under the logo reflection layer, and then I'm going to select the logo reflection layer and shift click on layer 1. And the reason I put the logo reflection layer above the layer 1 layer before we join them together is because when you join them together, then the top layer is the name that you inherit when it creates the new layer. You will notice this new layer we created down here is called Company Reflection, not Layer 1, and that's because we put the Company Reflection layer above that Layer 1 layer before we join them together. Now if you're using older versions of Photoshop, then you want to select the layer that you want to give the layer name to. Select that layer first, and then just click on the link icon next to the other layer. And then when you join them together, it will inherit the name of the layer that you selected first. Okay, so with these two layers selected, I'm going to hit Control E to join those together. So now it's just one rasterized layer again. And there we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the opacity down. You can do it by clicking and dragging on the slider, or a quick way to do it is with that layer selected, you can just hit 3 on your keypad, and that will bring the opacity down to 30%. Now let's go to the Company Reflection layer, click on it, and then hit 3 to drag its opacity down to 30%. Now you'll notice a problem right away. We have that cool reflection we're talking about. However, since there is one layer on top of another, and we're dealing with transparency here, those layers are kind of blending together and it doesn't look realistic. So what we need to do is erase those parts of the company reflection that are underneath this logo layer. And the way we can do that is by making a selection out of this logo layer, and then with that company reflection layer selected, we'll delete everything that's within that selection. So I'm going to control click on the preview box on the logo reflection layer. So I'm going to hold on to Control and click on that preview box, and then you'll notice that our logo layer has been selected. Now notice that if you change the opacity before you link these two layers together, before you rasterize those layers, then when you try to make a selection here, it won't show up. Because when you link those two layers together, even though the opacity is down to 30%, you'll notice up here the opacity has jumped up to 100%. And there are no pixels here that are fully selectable, so when you control click to select something, you won't actually see the selection around the edges. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then it really doesn't make a big deal because we've already done it this way, so you don't have to worry about it. But what you want to do is before you link those two layers together, it's very important to leave your opacity alone until after you join those two layers together. Otherwise, your selection techniques will not work as well. So with our logo reflection layer selected, our company reflection layer selected, but we've made a selection out of our logo reflection layer, we're going to just hit delete and start deleting part of this company layer. Now before you hit delete, make sure you do have this company reflection layer selected. So I'm going to hit delete, and you'll notice that everything underneath this logo reflection layer has just been deleted on our company layer. So I'm going to hit Control D to deselect. And there we go, we have our reflections. Now if you want to make the reflections look a little bit more realistic, one thing you can do is you can add a layer mask to make these reflections fade out as it gets further away from the layer itself, or from the layer above it. So with this company reflection layer selected, I'll show you how to do that. With that layer selected, I'm going to click on this layer mask icon, you'll notice it adds another box over here to the right. So with that box selected, I'm going to go over here and select our gradient tool, and I'm going to select our foreground to background gradient. And you want to make sure that you have black selected for your foreground color and white selected as your background color when you're doing this. And then I'm going to click at the bottom of this, make sure you have that layer selected. At the bottom of this reflection, I'm going to click and drag upwards, fading from white to black. But really what that's doing is it's applying a mask. And you'll notice the white part of that mask has been deleted, so it's kind of fading to transparent towards the bottom of the reflection. And we'll do the same thing for the logo reflection layer. We'll click on logo reflection, and then we'll click on the add new layer mask icon. And then with that layer mask selected, again, we'll add a gradient to this. We'll start at the very bottom of the logo and drag upwards, not all the way to the top, just about 3/4 of the way. And there we go, that one's fading to transparent as well. So now it looks like they're sitting on top of some kind of reflective surface, and you'll notice that by adding these reflections, it has given this logo much more depth. It looks like now this logo, the word logo, is way in front of that company, the word company, instead of just sitting on top of it. So that gives your logo a lot more depth. And again, you don't have to do this with just a logo. You can do this with anything you want to add reflections to. Now you might want to go in and make your reflection look a little more animated by giving it a ripple or something like that. And you can do that using your filter menu. You can go to filter, distort, and ripple. And by doing that, you can adjust the size of your ripple and things like that. Now right now it's not actually applying the ripple to the layer itself because we still have this mask selected. So I'm going to hit cancel here, and what we want to do is apply that mask first. So we're going to right click on this mask and click on apply layer mask. So now you can no longer make adjustments to that mask. Your layer is now completely rasterized, and this is the final version of what it looks like down here. Okay, let's apply this other mask too by right-clicking on it and clicking on Apply Layer Mask. There we go. Now we can add those ripples. So I'm going to click on the logo reflection layer. We'll go to Filter, Distort, Ripple. And there we go. We're actually adding the ripple to the text itself this time, which is good. And you can adjust the amount of that ripple. If you want it to be completely illegible, you can choose a high amount like this, but I'm going to keep it down close to about 100%, 140%. That looks good. Let's click on OK and see what that looks like. There we go. And if that looks good, if that's what you want to use, then you can go to your company reflection layer and you can apply those same settings. We can just apply that very last filter that we applied by hitting Control F. And it will apply a filter to that company layer as well. Now if you're going to apply that ripple effect, you might want to apply that ripple effect before you go in and delete the sections of the company layer that go underneath the logo reflection layer. And the reason that is because you're distorting both layers, and so the parts that you've deleted are now a little bit different. However, in this particular picture, you can't really tell a difference, so it looks alright. But generally, if you're going to apply a ripple effect like this, you want to apply that effect before you delete those sections of the company reflection that lay behind the logo reflection. But all in all, that is how you create a simple ripple effect using Photoshop. I personally prefer it without the ripple effect. I just like that simple reflection. Let's just go back a couple of steps.